Yeah, anyway, so we're at about 4,900 feet, basaltic lava flows, yada yada, probably, 8, 10 million years old and what the shit, whatever. Got a pretty interesting mineral here poking out that was embedded in the matrix, either embedded in the matrix of this basaltic magma when it cooled, or it precipitated out later through pores in the rock. Minerals wash out of the rock and then later they get diluted in solution, or dissolved in solution rather, and then precipitated out in little pockets in the rock later. This is a pretty interesting one, just judging from the way it fractures. It's got this almost conchoidal fracture, It looks kind of like, you could say it looks almost like like a weird kind of shark tooth cone. It's got that conical fracture to it. So most stuff is done flowering, but there's a cool plant down there I was going to show you later on. It's a monotypic genus of the chicory tribe of the Asteraceae. You can see, this typical dusty volcanic soil, after about June, it dries out, the fucking dust gets everywhere. It's a pain in the ass. It's all over the back of my truck. Anyway, here's a better specimen you can see. It's got that kind of shatter fracturing, conical shatter fracturing. Very strange mineral. It's coming out of all this shit up there. You see that? All this basaltic lava flow. It's got to look up on a geologic map, see what's going on in the surface exposure, what type of shit we're standing on right here. Oh, God. These fucking rocks are blowing my mind. Look at it. Look at that. You see what that is? It looks like it's either the way that a crystal formed. It was a crystal that formed in the magma out of solution after the magma had already cooled, or perhaps this magma cooled somewhat slow. I mean, it's just got all little bits of shit in there. It's an amazing rock. But you know what else is amazing is this Eriogonum, since it's one of the only 2 or 3 things flowering right now. Of course, Eriogonum is a fucking massive genus. The buckwheats, the wild buckwheats, no relation to the shit you make pancakes out of, so don't go getting excited, And very hard to key out, This one, it's got cauline leaves. It's a perennial. Okay, perennial and annual are 2 of the things you want to pay attention to. Does it come back every year? Perennial. Does it have woody tissue? Perennial. Or does it flower once and then die? And it's just obviously an annual. But then you want to pay attention to the involucres. You want to pay attention to, God damn it, I haven't keyed out a buckwheat in so long. There's other words I forgot. But you could see these flowers are upright. And in some other species, they're pendant. They're hanging down. These ones are poking up. Tiny flowers too. That's what makes them hard, because you can't even really see the flowers. You take someone who's not into botany, who doesn't know about this shit. They come out here, they just see some green bullshit on the ground, some ground cover. You can't see the flowers on there. That's why they're a pain in the ass. But once you look closer, like with a lot of things, you really start to see they're fucking, God, there's got to be over 300 species, and they're so successful in the North American West. And down into Mexico, etc. Polygonaceae is the family. You got some weird plants in Polygonaceae. But the flowers are just these fucking umbels, Very, very strange. A lot of shit going on. Love the Eriogonums, but they can drive you nuts trying to figure out what they are, obviously. Like I have no idea what the shit this is, but I do know, just from the flower structure, it's an Eriogonum, and then of course the leaf shape, and then of course you see them all over the Intermountain West. Wonderful genus. Okay, here's an interesting plant that anybody living out west should know. This is Mentzelia laevicaulis, and it's common throughout the Great Basin and hotter, high desert areas in the North American West. The genus Mentzelia has a lot of different species in it and a lot of variation. These, unfortunately, are almost done flowering. You can see that's the capsule right there. The petals have already fallen off. But when they do flower, they're called blazing stars for a good reason. I mean, you can see this one's not open yet. This one's, the one beneath it's done, but the one above it's not open yet. It's got these, they're huge. These five petals united at the base, and they got dozens of stamens, which you can kind of see poking out. Remember, those are the male parts. Now, Mentzelia has a lot of different species in it. Here's another one. This is, I believe, Mentzelia lindleyi, or one of the other ones, I'm not sure. But you get the same thing going on. Same flower structure, same structure of the fruit, that little capsule. See that tube right there? It's and they're also called, I guess you could call them Velcro plants is another name for them, because they got these hairs on them, on the leaves, you know, that's, at least, especially in abaxial surfaces, which, you know, again, discourage herbivory, but also keep that goddamn moisture in that tissue. Remember the stomata, the stomates, the gas pores, and any leaf are generally on the abaxial side, the lower side. And so that's why you normally get most of the hairs on most plants, at least in xeric areas, the hairs are generally on the lower side, as is the case here. But these are barbed hairs, and they make it, you know, almost feel like a Velcro. I mean, you can get it to stick. I mean, look at that. Just sticking it on my shirt. You know, again, Mentzelia is the genus, Loasaceae is the family. They got another genus called Eucnide, E-U-C-N-I-D-E, and it's that's also common throughout the American West, as well as Mexico. I've seen it in the lowlands of Oaxaca and Puebla State in Mexico, and those get fucking enormous, and they also have the same flower morphology, you know, that kind of blazing star flower morphology, and they get, I mean, they could be upwards of 3 or 4 feet across. It's a pretty wonderful plant family and a wonderful genus. Holy shit, this is pretty cool. This is a Psorothamnus kingii. Look at it, the fractal pattern in those branches. Now, Psorothamnus is a genus of Fabaceae, that's the legume family, that's very successful in North American deserts. And an apomorphy for it that I've noticed seems to be the presence of these glands on the stem. If I can find some here, goddammit. And of course, the glands exude terpenes and oils and all sorts of secondary chemistry that discourages herbivory and gives the plant a fighting chance against things that might gnaw on it. Over there, you can see the glands right there, and its stem. They're just basically little resin-filled pockets on the epidermal tissue. Now, the interesting thing about this species is I believe it's locally endemic to these dunes here in north central Nevada. But the genus Psorothamnus is very successful, like I said, all across North American deserts. You get Psorothamnus spinosus, aka the smoke tree, Psorothamnus emerii. There's quite a few species, and they're all very beautiful. And they all have this kind of pinnate, tomentose, somewhat tomentose foliage with a thick, waxy cuticle on the stem and glands. And, you know, you get your typical zygomorphic Fabaceae flowers. Flowers that are so indicative of the pea family. As well as that illustrious goddamn calyx right there. And of course, they've, you can see they've modified their branching stems into spines, which again also helps discourage herbivory. And believe me, if you're a green thing in a very hot and dry climate like this, there's going to be a lot of things trying to eat you. So there's immense selective pressure to, you know, make yourself as unappealing as possible to herbivores. It's another cool species of Fabaceae right here. Now this bastard right here has confounded me from the start. It's a species of Asteraceae, that is the sunflower family, of course, which I've known, what the fuck is that? Which I've known for a while, you know, just from seeing it around. It's Dicoria canescens is the name of it, but I've never seen it flowering. And I've seen it down there in Baja. I've seen it on the east coast of Baja, in the Colorado desert. It's another desert aster, but I still have not seen the goddamn thing flowering. But the leaf structure is pretty impressive. You got these toothed leaves, and just look at how goddamn canescent they are. Canescence just means basically very fuzzy. You know, so anything that's canescent is generally adapted to a dry climate, which this is. I mean, it even has canescence in the fucking species epithet. Look at that, though. Tons of little strigos hairs. Again, there are so many goddamn words for hairy in the world of botanic nomenclature, but look at that. If I could just hold it still for a sec. Look at it. This is a plant that has just adapted to intense exposure to ultraviolet light so perfectly. Ultraviolet light and heat. It doesn't just have hairs on the adaxial surface where the stomata are. It's also got hairs on the adaxial surface on the top there to reflect all that light and keep the humidity levels up in that boundary layer humidity close to the leaf epidermal tissue. The fucking stem's even canescent too. God damn, you know, this is one of the reasons that I'm so in love with the evolution of life on Earth, because you just see endless adaptation. You see endless forms most beautiful, as Darwin's lovely ass put it, and you just see life adapting. You see the same methods of adapting to similar environments. You know, you see the same methods popping up in completely unrelated taxa of organisms, whether they're animals or plants. It's pretty goddamn incredible. Anyway, Dicoria canescens, everybody, go fuck yourself. Bye. Look at this. Again, the Psorothamnus turns out is an endemic species, and it only grows in the sand dunes. You get over there to where there's more sagebrush and not the shifting dune habitat, and it tapers off. So imagine how easily all this shit could be wiped out. This plant that's evolved there, probably been here for tens of thousands of years, and only occurs in this county in central Nevada, just by some simple morons who don't know that it's here, coming up here to tear shit and drive around in circles on their fucking go-karts or whatever this shit. You know, I never understood it. Why you want to do that shit in these beautiful places? You should be coming to these beautiful places to learn how to calm down and not feel homicidal, instead of making other people like me feel fucking homicidal. You know, it's like I had a friend who used to do graffiti. I took her once to a little obsidian pile. This is years ago, and she went and tagged the rock, and I wanted to kill her. I love her, but I wanted to kill her. Save the fun, crime, and the vandalism and all that stuff for the cities where it belongs. The cities are already trashed. They're already giant garbage piles, okay? It's fine to take your ATV or your motorcycle and go tear up the city, do sideshow shit like that, go paint billboards, whatever the fuck. Don't take that shit out here, all right? It's beautiful out here. It's nice. This is my fucking church. You come here, I'm going to go fuck up your church, all right? That's all I got for you, all right? Real soft, real gentle, nice. Go slap you around. Bye. Bromus tectorum, a horrible invasive plant that's taken over much of western North America. So much so that you could see the plant once it's, before it dries out, once it's got all the carotenoid and anthocyanin red pigments in it, that you could see it on satellite images from space. And it's all over the Great Basin. And the tragic thing about it, aside from the fact that it gets in your goddamn boots and is a real pain in the ass to get out, is the fact that it catches fire and then of course severely alters habitat once it does. It catches fire and very easily and burns everything, and in doing so completely eliminates much of the sagebrush and other perennial plants that have been here for so long, and then they have a lot of trouble coming back. But of course the cheatgrass does not. It comes back just easily the next year. The seeds, there's a soil seed bank of all the Bromus tectorum seeds, so you end up just getting a monotypic non-native grassland of one of the most, possibly the most obnoxious plant in the American West, and that's Bromus tectorum, originally brought over from Eurasia probably 100, 150 years ago, maybe even longer than that, maybe 200 years ago. It was brought over by a lot of the stockmen and the ranchers and whatnot. I'm not sure if it was accidental or what. I don't think it's, I mean, obviously it's unpalatable to cattle right now, but maybe it's a little bit better before it dries out. Either way, horrible pain in the ass. I believe there might be things in its native habitat that keep it in check that people are trying to introduce over here, fungal pathogens or insects or something. But right now it runs, like many non-native invasive species, it runs away unchecked because there's nothing to keep it in check. It can outcompete everything here. Real pain in the ass. Oh, now here's a real nice one. This is a really weird plant. There's only 3 species in the genus, and it's in the amaranth family, of course. And you could basically see it's so perfectly adapted to this, to the hot and dry regime. This is Crimepaysbutbotanydoesnt lanata. It's got kind of a silly genus name. It was named after a Krishnanikov, who was some Siberian guy. The common name is winterfat. I think just because, you know, animals can browse on it in the winter. It's edible, but I mean, it's one of the weirdest goddamn plants. And whenever I see it, I only see one of them. Like, there's just one here, there's another one over there, and there's no others. You know, but they really stand out. Again, amaranth family. I believe it used to be in Canepodeaceae. Now it's an Amarantaceae. They merged the 2 genera. I mean, they were quite alike anyway, but then I guess when the taxonomists did their molecular look-see, they realized it was all one family. But it's not flowering, unfortunately. But I mean, Jesus Christ, look at how hairy that is. It's just perfectly adapted to that harsh UV exposure. reducing the heat, reducing the transpiration. You know, indestructible, at least in terms of hot and dry. And this goes, it's quite common throughout the Western North America. I've seen it in Baja California as well. Just, you know, any of the hot and dry areas in Western North America. Crescenticovia lanata. So anyway, just off the side of I-80, along the pilot truck stops, spent Monster energy drink cans, gallon jugs of trucker piss, and occasional whorehouses, I'm standing looking at another species of Psorothamnus. Remember I told you about that? A real nice Fabaceae with those nice glands, and they're much more prominent in this species. This is Psorothamnus paludinius, and it looks a lot like Psorothamnus amorii, except Psorothamnus amorii grows a little bit further south and is a little bit different of a leaflet, a branching thing going on with these cute little leaflets here. The terminal leaflets on Hemorrhoid tend to be a little bit longer than the lateral ones. Regardless, you could really see those goddamn glands, and those glands are responsible for the intense, almost citrus smell that I get when I rub my fingers along them. You know, just full of nice terpenes. And I believe almost all species of Psorothamnus do this. And there's quite a few species in the genus. And you can see here in late July, it's one of the only things going off next to a dainty-ass little phlox that I've seen nearby as well. You know, it's so hot and it's so dry. You know, it makes the water gallon jugs of trucker piss swell in the sun. You know, you just imagine all that Gatorade that's flowing through those sedentary kidneys filled with Carl's Jr. and perhaps a vape pen or some chewing tobacco. Oh, God. You can tell I got some residual PTSD from my experiences. So anyway, look at that cluster, that inflorescence. You know, not all Psorothamnus get this. Psorothamnus spinosus, aka the smoke tree, and it really does look like smoke, does not have these kind of globose circular clusters of flowers. You know, and its flowers are a little bit different of a color too. They're more of a bluish violet. But regardless, it's a beautiful goddamn plant. It's extremely successful in the deserts, and the fruits, of course, being in a pea family, look like little beans. But just the intense glands on this thing are what really strike me. There's also a species of plant called Pelasteles, which is a parasite only on species of Psorothamnus. And it only, you know, the whole plant basically lives inside of the tissue and only comes out. The only time you see the plant is when it produces little flowers on the stem that erupt through the epidermal tissue, kind of like, you know, some H.R. Giger shit going on with the Alien, you know? The flowers smell pretty nice too. Anyway, that's all I got for this Psorothamnus. So anyway, here I am in the middle of the northern Nevada desert again, near a roughly 12 million year old exposure of sedimentary rock that was created by volcanic ash. And you know, I've been coming to this spot for a while. You can see what's going on. It almost looks like limestone, but it's basically high silica volcanic rock. And like I said, it's been cemented into an ash, and it's been enough so to preserve the Sequoia dendron chenii that was growing here 12 million years ago. If you could see that, little impression right there. It's there's little bits of organic material everywhere, but this is the finest specimen I've found yet. I was here a year ago, and just found a little 2-inch by 2-inch piece. But you could see, I mean, you can clearly make out the scales on the foliage right there. You know, it almost makes it, I mean, I guess I would say it certainly makes it worth it being out here in the 95-degree heat. So, and then there's other little bits of organic material in there you could see. You know, but it's really hit or miss with this rock. I mean, it's just that sometimes it breaks in big chunks, sometimes it breaks in little flakes. Nice tuffaceous exposure. Anyway, how about that, huh? Probably donate this to the UCB paleontology, paleobotany department if they want it, or any other university paleobotany departments. I don't need this. You know, what am I gonna do? Just sit it on my mantle? You know, shine it. You know, put some wax on it and put it on a little mantle with a corny label. I don't know, you know, I don't need it. It belongs to the museum. There's another nice little piece of foliage, but this fragment is not going to last. Look at how paper thin that is. But you can see the scales, the individual foliage scales.